and welcome back to another episode of the Globe Talks with Trader series, where you can find out the ins and outs of crypto trading. I'm your host Sunlight, and today I'm delighted to welcome onto the show Oleg Giberstein, co-founder and COO of Coinrule. So, what do you want to find out about what Coinrule is and how you can use automated trading strategies, and also what are his thoughts on the current market pulsar as we chat from everything about ChatGPT to the current FTX situation. So, on to the interview.
The Globe mobile app is now live on the Apple App Store. Trade anytime, anywhere, with any asset as collateral. Stay connected with all your positions on the go. Globe, exchange everything, now even easier.
So, Oleg, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your journey into the crypto sphere?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thanks for having me on in the first place. So my background actually was I studied international relations at Oxford, went to work in banking. I worked here just across the road at Citibank. But already like my master's thesis, my MPhil, I had written about the relationship between sovereign debtors and private lenders. And I got really into the concept of like private currencies. So I was kind of relatively interested in all of it. And I had been following Bitcoin and the crypto sphere since about 2015, 2016, but really got into it in 2017, kind of went down the rabbit hole and it blew my mind, and I stuck around since bull and bear markets both.
It's so funny, everyone always calls crypto the rabbit hole.
It's because there's so much to discover. I was actually explaining this the other day to someone, but like we're not talking about like one specific problem that gets solved. We're talking about a technology that could kind of rebuild the rails on which financial transactions run. So like it touches so much of our life. So when you actually realize that and you go down the rabbit hole of discovering these use cases, that's what really kind of got me,
Amazing. So to kind of speak more on, there's so much within the crypto itself. So you're focused primarily on DeFi.
Yeah, so obviously I'm one of the founders of Coinrule. We help our users build automated trading strategies. We currently run both on CeFi, but soon also on DeFi. And the way it works is that users connect their exchange accounts through an API key to Coinrule. They build their strategies, and then the strategies execute on the exchanges. Now, we are about to launch an integration with MetaMask and Uniswap, so our users will also be able to build those automated strategies on Uniswap. And the idea is kind of like we build rules such as if something happens, so if the price of wrapped Bitcoin goes up 5% and volume in this Uniswap pool increases by 20 million in 10 minutes, I want to do this. And then if something else happens, I want to get out of it. So you kind of define if this and that style strategies to execute automatically.
Okay, amazing. So yeah, you talked just a little bit about Coinrule. So can you talk to me about what kind of problems you guys are actually solving?
Sure. The way even actually Coinrule started was that my co-founder Gabriele was trying to build an automated strategy on IG index, even like outside of crypto, and realized like it's actually almost impossible unless like you're a coder, unless you're able to build your own scripts. But even if you're a coder, building a script takes a lot of time. So for normal people, this is completely inaccessible. And obviously you can just go and buy and sell an asset on an exchange. But like, what if you actually have an idea and I want to do this if that happens, but then if something else happens, I want to do something else, right? So you can, on some exchanges already today, you can define take profit and stop loss. But what if there are multiple cases, multiple scenarios you want to prepare for? So kind of like the way you plan your calendar, why can't you also plan your trading? And this is what really Coinrule makes available to normal people.
That's amazing. So you're talking a lot about coding and stuff. With the introduction of ChatGPT, do you feel like it's going to make your lives easier, or is it kind of competition?
It's a really good question. I think it will make our life easier because first you can integrate it in all sorts of aspects of the experience. And you can, for example, use AI to improve trading strategies. So you have a strategy that you test it on historical data, you see how it would have performed. And now you tell a chatbot, hey, find me what numbers I would need to change to get a better performance in that strategy. And the AI obviously can very quickly run through the data and come up with an answer. So integrating AI into your trading strategy will be an absolute game changer over the next years. Like, we are super excited for that.
Okay, and have you guys started implementing AI?
So I don't want to give away too much, but it's definitely like it's high up on our list of things we are looking into.
Oh, amazing! Got some alpha here. Yeah. So actually, one of the main kind of selling points, if you will, of Coinrule is that you guys have like weekly newsletters with different trading strategies for your customers. So could you tell us, where do these trading strategies come from, and how can people actually trust them?
Sure. I mean, to trust them, it's actually pretty straightforward because we share them on TradingView. We create a script and we share them on TradingView, so you're able to check them out and run your own backtest on them. So you can see on TradingView directly what would have been the performance of that strategy. Some of them we create ourselves, some of them we create together with the community. So already today we have like a really kind of active group of traders on Discord, and they love to like discuss strategies, see what would have performed well. It's almost like what's fun about trading strategies, it's almost a bit like a puzzle, right? You want to crack the code and come with something that works. And then discuss it, show it to others, share it, and so on. So that's kind of what the weekly or bi-weekly actually newsletter feeds into. But a lot of it is also just our internal trading team coming up with that.
Oh, yeah, good. Could you talk a bit more about the team?
Yeah, sure. You mean the team in terms of how many, who we are?
Yeah, and like, you know, what kind of background you have?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, in terms of like the founders, we have 3 founders who met here in London at an accelerator program called Mass Challenge, like 5 years ago. It both feels like eternity, but actually also it's not that long ago. My co-founder Gabriele and myself, we kind of come from like he comes more from a product, UX, UI background, but always worked in like innovation labs and the big banks. I come more from a traditional banking and finance background. And our third co-founder is Zdenek. He is like the technical co-founder. He's like a proper hacker, you know. He worked on a lot of different products and projects before Coinrule. Just like us, he got also deep into crypto. As a team, we are fully remote. We are 18 people now. It's mostly engineers. We have some people also on the trading side who support our users, but really it's mostly engineers and like the people who built the platform.
That seems quite typical of normal like crypto projects. Like the bulk of the team are engineers, right?
It's hard, you know. Building product is really hard and time consuming. And it's kind of like our users want us to do so many things at the same time. And it's always, you have the requests you're getting from the users, but there are also the things you know will be amazing to build. You know, things like integrating AI into strategies, things that maybe some of the users don't even think about just yet. You know, the case of if you ask the users what they want the faster horse. But actually what they want is they want to get from A to B as fast as possible, but they don't necessarily care how. So it's for us as founders to come up with solutions for speeding up the journey for them. So like kind of understanding what to build and then actually implementing it, testing it, figuring out if it makes sense and then improving on it takes a huge amount of time, right? And that's where the complexity comes from.
Some big respect to the engineers.
Always.
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned you came from Citigroup. So what is it about crypto that kind of excited you so much so that, you know, you went into a different industry?
So first of all, like when I was at Citi, I didn't yet get into crypto. I got into it after I left Citi. So the fun thing in a way with when you're in banking is that you're so busy that you kind of, it's a huge opportunity cost, right? Like obviously you're doing well, it's a great career, etc. But because you're so busy, you're missing out on what else is going on. So you don't really have the time to engage with it. As I left Citi and I started my first business, I really started to kind of engage with the tech community. I started to learn more about crypto. And like as I was saying earlier, obviously it appeals to me because I had that interest in private currencies. But like, there's so many things that you just see as an important factor. Like for example, at Citi, we really struggle with technology. Like if you're a big institution, your tech stack is just a constant source of pain, and you can't you can't replace that from scratch. Like you would need to stop the financial system for like 10 years and just like build something, and you can't just replace something one-to-one. Where blockchain comes in is, right, we are essentially building a new system from bottom up, with a lot of resilience built in. Because right now, like especially DeFi, it's the Wild West, right? Like there's so many problems, so many scams, but actually that helps us to make the system more resilient. The best way to strengthen and build a new system is to really have it better proven. We're testing not just the engineering side, we're testing the game theory, we're testing the tokenomics, we're testing the game design of it. And it's happening in the wild in real time. It's like one of the most fascinating financial experiments probably the most actually fascinating financial experiment that has ever been done. If you have the slightest interest in finance and you're not interested in crypto, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, awesome. So actually, so you said you were testing the tokenomics of, so you have a Coinrule token?
No, we don't. That's something we never wanted to rush, and it would be only something we would do if it made sense. Made sense for the company, made sense for the community, made sense like for the token and such. It's kind of, I think a lot of projects made the mistake of launching a token too early and almost like distracting, instead of focusing on the product, suddenly the conversation with the users becomes around the token price. And tokens can make a lot of sense, but they only really make sense if they're somehow tied to the core product, in my opinion. And not everyone has really figured it out successfully yet.
Okay, yeah. So would there be a Coinrule token?
Now you're asking again for the alpha. I can't reveal anything, but there are no like obvious trends yet. Obviously, it's something like when you're in crypto, you talk about these kind of things, but it's not something right now we have.
Yeah, but so important, in the crypto for use case, right? Because there are plenty of projects who, like, you do wonder, like, do you need a token? But,
exactly. It's kind of but I don't think there's anything wrong with launching one per se. Like I do think there is, like, it's all about experimentation, right? And you won't really know until you find out. Obviously, what's wrong is so many projects are like basically scamming, and like they're launching tokens as a money grab. If you launch a token with really together with the community, and like the expectations are clear, the concept around it is clear, you're willing to change around the tokenomics, you understand, and you communicate clearly this is an experiment, not a get rich quick scheme, I don't think there's anything wrong. Now regulators might disagree because they'll say, hey, this is security, this is that, but obviously they're using outdated framework and apply it to like new technology. I don't think that's the right way to do this. So I'm not opposed to projects launching tokens. I'm opposed to project launching tokens and like over-promising and turning them into cash grabs. So you need to be like really, you need to know what you're doing with it, and you need to be like very conscious of it and very transparent about it. I think that's absolutely fine.
Amazing. I mean, if only more people had your kind of mentality.
I think it's hard to keep the positive mentality. Probably no one starts being like, oh, I'm going to do a scam. Some probably do, quite a few probably. But like a lot of projects that end up getting dodgy, they start with good intentions, but as they see the easy money, particularly in the bull market, they get greedy and then things go downhill from there. So I think it's a really tough nut to crack.
Exactly. Because, even if you invest in an initially legit project, it could go downhill.
Absolutely. Look, and that's like normal investing, right? All the tech stocks, like I think Netflix is down like 75% or something, the Netflix stock. Are people watching less Netflix? I don't think so, right? But now here we're talking about like, macroeconomic factors and, what's been driving asset prices is like completely detached from fundamentals anyway. So, and I think it's quite similar for crypto assets these days, to be honest. So I'm not necessarily looking at like, is this a legitimate project? Will I invest in it because of that? I just think, everything is down bad, and maybe in a few years' time we will start being able to pick the winners based on their fundamentals. But I don't think we're quite there yet. That's not investment advice.
Yeah. So actually, do you invest or trade yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I like when you run a trading company, you don't have that much time for trading. Ironically, I do. Obviously, I have a crypto investment portfolio. I'm pretty conservative because I don't have the time to do really like day-to-day management. Most of my portfolio is allocated in Bitcoin and Ethereum because those are the projects I trust the most and I know for sure they'll be around. And then other investments in crypto, I treat them like almost like startup investing, where you assume that it will be locked for 5 to 10 years, and you assume that there's a 95% likelihood that it's basically going to be wiped out. So if you have that mindset and you kind of only invest what you are willing to lose, think of it as like a ultra high risk portfolio. I think that's how I do it, and that's usually if people ask me, that's what I say. To me, sounds like a reasonable strategy to think about it.
Yes, absolutely, especially in such a volatile market,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, but that's the fun, right? I mean, like, let's be honest. Do I invest in stocks? No, because I'm dead bored by something going up 10%. Like traditional investors, open the champagne bottles when they make 15% return, and I don't go out of the house for 15% return. There is a reason we are here in crypto. Like, let's not beat around the bush. But that's the beauty of like. You take a gigantic risk, but you get rewarded with a potentially enormous return, and that's very similar again to startup investing. I mean, in the bull market, in the bull market, obviously, I did very well, and in the bear market, like everyone else, I'm down bad. I think pretty much I represent like a generic, I hope to say smart crypto investor, but probably more below smart, but still, overall, I'm okay with that performance, The advice I've been kind of, again, I'm careful not to give too much advice because people need to learn their own lessons, but like to always take profits on the way up, but also to sell on the way down, because you have to assume, like even I don't want to think of it as trading, but the beauty of crypto is this is significantly more liquid than a startup investment. The advantage is you can de-risk it. The disadvantage is you have to be much more hands-on involved, which is actually why something like Coinrule, our product, really helps users, because even someone who doesn't want to be an active trader can build in steps at which to take profit, at which to have stop losses and so on. But my goals are always, when the portfolio moves a certain amount, I want to take profits. So even though I'm down quite bad from my portfolio all-time high, I'm very happy with the profits I have taken along that journey. And that's kind of like what I tell people. The other thing is that people get really upset when they think about their theoretical net worth at the all-time high. And that's complete nonsense, right? Like that figure means nothing. A profit is a profit, not if you have it in your shitcoin, but if you have it in something that is more trusted, but that is more stable. But what is stable in crypto anyway, right? Stable coins racked us, exchanges racked us. So even if you have your fund, if you have taken profits and your funds are secured, you need to be deadly certain that they are in some like hardware wallet at the bottom of the ocean and only you have access to it, So like, having that like really survivor resilience mindset is what keeps you alive in crypto.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. So, what are the next steps for you in Coinrule?
So for us right now, we're building through the bear market. The best time in crypto to build is right now, because if you think about it, during the bull market, you're barely coping with keeping the servers up. You're getting so many signups, so much demand. So you are just keeping things running. Now is the time you can actually, you're like, okay, this is what our users want. These are the things we want to expand into. So it's kind of our ideas, entrepreneurs about where the market is going, versus these are the specific user requests we receive. Now we have the time to actually implement them. We're very lucky. We raised our seed round in 2021. We have lots of runway, so we're just sitting there like building, and it's a lot of fun. Building is much more fun than fundraising. So we actually, we're loving it.
Okay, actually, going back to what you were saying about, you need to have all your funds in somewhere really secure, you can get it. What is Coinrule doing to protect your users' funds?
Sure. I mean, first of all, we're not an exchange, right? So the number one step for us is we don't hold customer funds and we don't have withdrawal rights. So what happens when you use Coinrule is that your funds are on your exchange wallet. So the exchanges we connect with, that's where they sit. Now you create an API key which allows you to set basic trading instructions through Coinrule. So you build your strategies on us and then they execute on the exchange. What we do is we have obviously very heavy encryption for the API keys. We as the team don't have access to the user API keys. Users have two-factor authentication on, but even in the worst case, if a user would get hacked somehow through 2FA and login and so on, the hacker could not withdraw the user funds. So those are the steps we're taking. Now, obviously, for our DeFi integration, we're writing some smart contracts, and we will have very, very detailed auditing. And obviously, the contracts are pretty standard and open source, so anyone will be able to audit them.
So very, very important, especially.
Very important. But most importantly, we don't hold the funds ourselves. So in a way, this is what makes it much safer for the user.
Absolutely, yeah. So talking about, custody, everything that's happened with FTX right now, give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, what a nightmare it has been for the industry. Like the sad part here is these guys turned out to be criminals. Like they manipulated, they lied, they broke all the terms they set themselves. And they were not just criminals, they were also idiots. Because they literally had all the advantages in the world, all the capital in the world. They were easily able to raise money. They had a top-notch team, and they threw it all away for nothing. Now, what makes me really upset here is that the mainstream, audiences are there blaming crypto and said, "Oh, crypto is a scam. Oh, crypto is a Ponzi." Whilst what actually happened with FTX has nothing to do with crypto. Nothing. Like it's a pure scam. It's like saying what Bernie Madoff did, the Ponzi he ran before the financial crisis. That's representative of the financial sector. Now, when the global financial crisis hit in 2007, 2008, there was so much malbehavior at the big banks that came out. There are so many cases where banks funded, drug cartels and facilitated money laundering and so on and so on. The authorities blame individual actors. They don't go out and say, let's shut down the entire banking sector. Now, DeFi and crypto and blockchain, the value proposition is so entirely different from what was ultimately a centralized custodial player who misbehaved, that it just makes me really upset to mix those two up. But obviously, to have that nuance, to actually see the difference is a rare thing. And it really upsets me that the kind of newspapers that really should know better, like the Financial Times and The Economist, they don't care enough to get these type of things right, and then it all ends up being thrown together in a pot. So how do I feel about FTX? Pretty angry, because these guys not only were absolute idiots and crooks, but also they dragged the name of the industry through the dirt. But ultimately, if you have any kind of reflection on what's going on, you should very clearly understand and see we are not talking about crypto here, we are talking about a financial crime that could have happened at any point in the last 50 years within the existing financial system. So in that sense, it's a non-story for me as such.
And it's sad because it feels like it's really set the wider crypto community back so far. It's just,
It has, and I would say that every time when there will be a bear market, the famous Warren Buffett saying that when the tide goes, you find out who was swimming naked. So when crypto markets crash, we find out who was swimming naked, and it turned out that most of them are swimming naked, unfortunately. But maybe this will really teach people to be much more vigilant with whom they trust, particularly when it comes to custody.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the more important, for cold wallets, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, cold wallets, it's an interesting one. I mean, obviously, like the exchange has their cold wallets, but like that's where the exchange must be transparent about it, right? Because as a user, I don't care where the funds are, I want to know they are safe. And the exchange needs to be able to prove to me that the funds are held safely and that they are matching, my funds to what's actually on the balance sheet, unlike what FTX was doing. Now, in DeFi, that's very easy because you can see it on the blockchain. In traditional finance, which includes the centralized exchanges, that's harder because you still have to take their word for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, just a curiosity of mine. So I know in traditional finance, there's the fractional reserve banking method. Does that happen at all in DeFi?
It's an interesting point. So obviously at the moment, all lending in DeFi has been over-collateralized, which means that if I want to borrow 1 Bitcoin, I have to deposit two Bitcoin, basically. Now, that's not very capital efficient. So there are projects out there that are trying to enable under-collateralized lending, which is what happens in a fractional reserve system where you can borrow, you deposit you have a mortgage over your house, but you are able to borrow, X and Y. You don't have to borrow a much smaller amount. You can actually unlock much more of your capital. The problem obviously in DeFi is that to do that, how can you actually trust someone? Because it has to be based on code. If the borrower turns out to not be able to repay, the smart contract needs to be able to liquidate them and make the protocol whole. If the position is under collateralized, there needs to be some kind of trust system in place that is strong enough that the person borrowing would have a very strong incentive to repay. And I'm not entirely convinced this is even possible to achieve, but there are experiments. There are some protocols, like I think Maple Finance, for example, experimenting with that. And maybe at some point we'll have a system based on both code as law and these my deposits, but also actually a person's on-chain credibility and identity tied to a loan.
Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Do you have any parting words of optimism for our audience in this bear market?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look at that. We're like in the most interesting industry out there. Let's say there's an incredible amount of things happening in tech. What we've been watching unveiled with ChatGPT and OpenAI and this incredible stuff. But for normal people, it's significantly harder to actually participate in any of those things. In crypto, you can touch it yourself. You can get involved yourself. There are so many aspects to it. Like really, what we're doing here is we're rebuilding the financial system whilst returning financial privacy, whilst introducing fascinating technologies like zero-knowledge proofs and so on. We are rebuilding the internet with financial rails that will allow anyone to pay anyone in the world, anyone to work for anyone to do any financial transaction in no time. If that's not blowing your mind, I don't know what you're doing in tech, right? So I'm super optimistic about that. And I know for sure, it's kind of, think about it this way. If this industry will survive and still be there in 10 years' time, our bags will probably be worth more if you're in the right projects than they are today. So if in 10 years' time the industry is still there, the market cap will be significantly larger than it is today. So I'm extremely optimistic. Just, don't invest in stupid stuff and it'll be fine.
Words of wisdom there.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you so much for watching this episode. And if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give us a like, comment, and subscribe. So, thanks Oleg for your time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you next time.